You're listening to the Author Stories Podcast, bringing you the story behind the stories and the storytellers.
Margaret White,
Terry Brooks,
Sheena Kamal,
Matthew Quick,
J.T. Ellison,
Walt D. Williams,
Brad Thor,
Corey Doctorow,
Brandon Sanderson,
Robin Mott,
Ernest Klein, Jim Butcher,
Sherwin Harris.
Visit hankgarner.com for archives of all the shows. Today's guest is
Marilyn Sherman.
Thanks for tuning into Author Stories. I really appreciate you listening. If you go to hankgarner.com, you can go through all of the archives, more than 300 shows, author interviews with the very best people in publishing today. On the right-hand sidebar, there's places where you can subscribe for just about every platform that you could possibly listen to the show on. I'd like to thank some sponsors today for their faithful support and for enabling us to bring you quality content like we do. Crystal Watanabe from Pico's House is one of the best editors I've ever met and whose work I really admire. She offers developmental editing, line editing, and beta reading. She's currently booking for May, so go ahead and send her a message now to get your project scheduled with her. She has 4 proofreaders on staff, so she can accommodate authors with much shorter lead time than some other editors do. She's a new affiliate member of the SFWA, and she comes recommended by best-selling authors such as Hugh Howey and Samuel Peralta. Most of her experiences with science fiction, speculative fiction, and middle-grade fantasy, but she really enjoys editing all genres and can really make your project shine. If you will mention Author Stories when booking your editing services, you can receive a $75 discount on manuscripts over 60,000 in length or a $25 discount on short stories. Pico's House, Pickoshouse. Please tell Crystal that you heard about it on Author Stories. Also, the Debt Collector series by Chuck Buda. Debt is a death sentence. Michael Wright lives the American dream. He works hard every day but still lives paycheck to paycheck. The bills keep piling up and now his 10-year-old daughter requires surgery to save her life. Michael is in a race against time to find money, but how far is he willing to go? Is he prepared to do whatever it takes? Can he defeat a menacing evil that stands in his way? The Debt Collector series is a gripping tale of psychological horror, raising questions about our modern lifestyles and the terrifying possibilities that hit too close to home. One reader described it as if serial killers and Wall Street made friends. Pay up and die, delinquent, bankrupt. The Debt Collector series is available in paperback and ebook formats exclusively from Amazon or free through Amazon Kindle Unlimited. Walk Beside Me by Christine Handy. Willow Adair has a picture-perfect life, or so it seems. A stunning model turned wife and mother, she lives in a beautiful home with her husband and 2 kids in historic Bexley, one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Columbus, Ohio. On the outside, she has everything. On the inside, she struggles with issues of self-worth. Spurned by her neglectful husband and hated by her rebellious teen daughter, Willow never feels she is good enough. She fears everyone she loves will leave. Walk Beside Me is the story of a woman who peels away the layers to find her inner warrior, a woman who faces insurmountable odds and thanks to her earthly angels, learns to treasure the gift of God's infinite light and love. Walk Beside Me by Christine Handy. Thank you to all of our sponsors for making the show possible. If you would like to sponsor the show, please go to hankgarner.com, and there's a link in the top menu bar where you can do that. At the end of the show, if you'll stick around, we're going to have an audiobook clip from Richard Gleaves, the Jason Crane series. Well, thanks for joining me again for the Author Stories Podcast, where I bring you the story behind the stories and the storytellers. Today, I have a very interesting guest joining me today. Marilyn Sherman is a keynote speaker, motivational speaker, and author, and I think she's going to bring something really unique to the show today. Welcome to the show, Marilyn.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. I've been reading through Is There a Hole in Your Bucket List, your new book, and it is, it's amazing. I have learned so much from it, and it's a great resource. So thank you for writing it, first off, and we're going to get all into that in just a second. But I begin each show with the same question, and that question is, what is your first memory of wanting to be a writer or a storyteller?
Oh, my first memory of wanting to be a writer or a storyteller. Probably my first memory was when I saw a speaker when I was 17 years old. His name was Roger Crawford, and he was speaking to a leadership class when I was in high school, and his message was he was running for a touchdown in his senior year in high school, and he had a prosthetic leg, and a defender tackled him, and he tackled his leg, and his leg came off, and he still was able to hop into the end zone to score the winning touchdown. And it was such an inspiring story to me. And his message to me was, it's not the handicapped people of the world who are disabled. It's the people who have all their abilities and don't use them. They handicap themselves. And I thought, you know what? I want to go out there and be a motivational speaker and inspire people to feel good about who they are so they can do better work in the world. And so I knew my destiny in terms of my role in the world and my role in life when I heard that speaker that day when I was 17. So that was my earliest memory of really wanting to go out and change the world through speaking and through telling inspiring stories.
Well, it's really interesting because when you go see a motivational speaker, and
are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me? Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
I muted my mic on accident. I'm sorry about that. So this is going to be what the show is like today, because those of you that are not listening, we've had some technical difficulties getting started. So we're just going to laugh through this because it's so I apologize. But what I was saying is, when you hear a great motivational speaker, you never come away from hearing them with a bullet-pointed list of great points that they made. What you come away with is feeling inspired because they told you a story that rooted in your soul and kind of planted those seeds that start growing from there. And a great motivational speaker is a great storyteller. Hands down, always that way.
And here's what he did for me too, is that he inspired me to go out and hear another speaker, and then hear another speaker, and then sign up for I remember I signed up for a course called Self-Image Psychology, and I hadn't even graduated from high school yet. And that's when I first learned about your mission statement of life. And I remember writing out my mission, and I wanted to be the younger on the Phil show. So for those listeners out there, that just dated me quite a bit, because Phil Donahue was a big hit before the Oprah Winfrey show. So I knew I wanted to be an author way back then.
Well, I remember as a kid, my dad owned a car dealership, and he was always listening to motivational tapes. That's back when you listened to tapes riding around in your car, and he would go to sales seminars and things like that. And I remember as a kid tagging along with him to a lot of these things, or listening in the car to people like Zig Ziglar and just so many of these guys. And I remember. To this day, I remember the stories that they told. I don't remember, how to close a deal or whatever, but I remember vividly a lot of those stories. So you said that he motivated you to go find other people. And, so when you're interested in that, where do you go to find those resources, and who do you seek out? And when you find the resources and the people, what do you start studying?
Well, this was a long time ago. Now it's really easy. Now you just go to Google and you just type in what you're interested in. I mean, I've just discovered podcasts recently. So, Scott Stratton is someone that I saw speak recently, and he was so inspiring. So I just discovered his podcast. So you really just, there's great books out there. So I'm listening to people who tell me what book you've read that's been really inspiring. So like Scott Halford was interviewed on a podcast recently, and the interviewer asked him, what books really influenced you? And so I wrote down his books. I mean, there's so many resources out there. It's not really about where to find them. It's about, okay, now follow through and go and seek them out and read those books and listen to those podcasts. But they're everywhere.
Yeah. you did you you have worked interesting. You've had an interesting career path. Let me put it that way. What do you study in college?
Sociology and psychology.
Okay. So those, if you wanted to be a motivational speaker or connect with people, those seem like good paths to follow. Was that a conscious effort?
Of course, absolutely. I mean, at first, I knew I wanted to be a motivational speaker, and then I figured I had to get a degree to get a job, to get the credibility to speak in front of audiences. That was my path. Plus, my dad wouldn't have it any other way. He's like, you have to get a degree, or else you're cut. And I thought communications was a good fit, but then there was, I had to take too much math for some reason, and then I barely passed my stats class for sociology. But I was really into the curriculum for sociology and studying people and what makes people tick. And so the sociology and the minor in psychology really was exciting to me and thrilling to me. So I actually started giving speeches while I was still in college. Like I started my, my visualizing of being a motivational speaker by putting on motivational talks in my dorm.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What did you, because I would assume that working on this is probably a little hit or miss in the beginning. And I'm friends with several stand-up comics, and I think that the storytelling element that a great stand-up comic does is very similar to a motivational speaker, which is very similar to a novelist. The storytelling thread runs through all of these things, and there's a little different delivery. But it's all about captivating the audience and holding them, and when they leave your event, or they leave the comedy club, or they close the book, they're taking a little bit of you with them in the end. So I would think that a motivational speaker is probably, the preparation is probably a lot like a stand-up comic, in that you've got material and you try it out on people and you see what resonates with them. How do you start building those skills?
Through a lot of practice. And my career path, I was a corporate trainer, which meant that I worked inside of a corporation. I was in charge of writing training material and then delivering training material to about 1,200 employees on the soft skills side of a finance company. So I didn't teach finance. I taught leadership and communication and team building kind of skills. And so I got to hone my skills in-house, and then they sent me out for training through, at the time, ASTD, and then they sent me to a career track sales training seminars, which were like one-day events. And as soon as I went to a career track event, I went to that speaker and I said, "Oh my gosh, you're speaking full-time. How do I get your job?" And he turned me on to a book called How to Make It Big in the Seminar Business by Paul Karasik. And in that book, there was a chapter on public seminar companies, and it was Career Track, Fred Pryor, Skill Path, and national seminars. And I literally applied to all of them. And Skill Path sent me out for an interview and hired me on the spot. So I left the corporate training job and jumped into a full-time contract training job. And so I was able to hone my stand-up platform skills by doing Skill Path seminars. And so that meant I was doing their material, which was 6-hour seminars. And I did those 6-hour seminars up to 5 days a week, up to 3 weeks a month. And I did that for 5 years. So while I was working that job, I started to develop my own stories and my own experiences, and I would start to weave them in. So by the time I left after 5 years and went out on my own, then I had my own repertoire of my own stories. So I had the luxury of that kind of a platform experience and a ready-made audience through Skill Path. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And that's amazing that you kind of get to springboard
Yeah.
off of someone else's material.
Yeah.
When you're developing those stories and those anecdotes and things that you're weaving in to the pre-prepared material, do you learn pretty quickly what's resonating with the audience, and maybe at the end of the day you're like, well, I'll never tell that story again,
Yes.
or
Oh, yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
I'm definitely doing that story again. I mean,
Yeah.
do you learn to read the audience pretty quickly?
I learned to read the audience really well, and I know that industrial engineers and male-dominated audiences don't resonate as much with some jokes and stories that I would tell to female entrepreneurs and business owners. So I learn what's going to fly and what's not going to fly, and so I just learn as much as I possibly can about an audience before I'm in front of them, so that I can adapt and adopt my message and change with them.
So how did you springboard out to doing your own material and putting together your own seminars and workshops?
I collected stories. I'm a voracious writer, so I would write down, like I would keep my humor file and my win list. My humor file are things that would happen on the road, things that just made me laugh hysterically, stories that would happen, reactions of things, that made me laugh, things I wanted to remember, things I didn't want to forget. And I just kept a catalog of all those things that made me laugh. So I called that my humor file, which really came in handy when I got stressed out on the road and when I had people that didn't like me or people that wrote mean things on my evaluations. I would try to refocus by reading what was on my humor file to make me laugh and realize, okay, this is funny, so I'm going to let this go. The pain of this negative evaluation, I'm going to let it go. And then my win list is I would write down all these amazing, wonderful, feel-good things. So with those things, I would just create my own stories and create my own anecdotes. Because what I didn't want to be was a speaker hack. And a speaker hack is somebody who uses other people's stories. And I learned that the hard way because I was, while I was working for Scale Path, I went to my first National Speakers Association winter workshop. I think that at the time they called it a Western workshop. And I saw the amazing Rosita Perez, who is a Hall of Fame speaker. And she was doing the closing keynote presentation. And she was this beautiful Latina woman with a beautiful flower in her hair and a guitar in her hand. And her message was, don't ever die with a song still in your heart. And she was funny, and she was poetic, and she was thoughtful, and she was hilarious and moving. I mean, all of the above. I loved her. And then she told this line that was so hysterically funny, I made a note of it. And so I saw her in the lobby at the end of the conference, and I was literally flying to another Scale Path seminar that I was conducting. And I said to her, I loved your presentation. This is my first NSA meeting, and is it okay if I use that line that you used that was so hysterically funny? I thought she was just going to say, sure, I'm flattered, because I thought that's how you did it in the speaking world, to use other people's lines and stories and jokes. And she just looked at me and she said, no, find your own stories. And I was really taken aback. But do you know that's the way I learned Skill Path, is it just gave us, 6 hours of material. You just repeated it. So that was my learning of the speaking industry. You just took the best of the best and repeated it. So then when I went to NSA and I saw this amazing speaker and she gave a great line and a great joke, I thought, oh, can I use that? I was just going to repeat it. And she said, no, find your own stories. And I thought, okay, I get it. You don't use other people's stories. You don't use other people's lines. You don't steal other people's jokes. You find your own material. I don't have the right to use other people's stuff. So to this day, I've never used Rosita Perez's that line. I never have. And even before she died, we had a lunch where we got together, and I told her that story, and she said, "Oh, Marilyn, you can have all my stories now." And I said, "No, those are yours. Those are yours." It was a sweet, sweet last meeting we had together. But I just honor her so much. I won't even tell the line. So it's a lesson that because I have this really great story that I tell in my speech, and It's a great story. It's a beautiful story ending, and it's about a little 7-year-old boy, and it's so impactful, and it's about 10-year job series. And if this little 7-year-old boy could do this amazing thing, then you and I do those things that we don't want to do. It's such a great, inspiring, unique story that I discovered on my own through watching the news and watching the Olympics, where you get a lot of inspiring thoughts, right? And I keynoted this event. And then 2 days later at the same event, a guy came up to me and said, Marilyn, I heard you speak the other day, and then I had to leave right after a speech to go do my own event. And I just want to tell you, I used your story, and it was a huge hit. And I just looked at him, and, there was like a pit in my stomach. It's like, you got to use your own stories. Use your own stories. I didn't mean to go off on a tangent there.
No. I think that's there's nothing like finding your story, and we all kind of use other people's. We begin with what we know, and then, but if you stay with it, you develop your own, and you have to. That's no matter which art form it is. We're all inspired by other people, but inspiration doesn't mean copying.
No. Keep track. Have a journal. Have something. Keep track. When something hits you, and you have this creative thought, put a journal by your bed, and you wake up in the middle of the night. Always have something ready, so that you can jot down a thought and a note, so that that's how you develop your own stories.
Right. So what is your message to people? When someone brings you in as a motivational speaker, what are they expecting from Marilyn?
People hire me to inspire and encourage their audience because they know they're going to feel like life is too short to be stuck in the balcony of their life. It's time to move out of the balcony and get right through general mission. Girl, front row Maryland. I speak on front row leadership and front row service. I believe that everybody has to the front row of life. And when you are living your life in the front row, you walk different, you talk different, and you inspire others just by the fact that you are feeling good about who you are and what you do and who you do it with. And the ultimate role of a leader to me is like an usher. I live in Las Vegas. And so when you go to a show in Las Vegas, there will be an usher. Two things, I guarantee it. The show that you see, that usher will have knowledge of the venue. They know where all the seats are. And number two, they have a flashlight. And what they do is they look at your ticket, and then they lead you to the most direct path to your seat. And that, to me, is what the ultimate leader is someone who illuminates the path for others. They light the way. Now, it doesn't matter what your title is. You can light the way for others just by how you are beaming with possibility, and you are beaming with enthusiasm, and you're beaming with a radiant light of hope and encouragement for others because you love what you do and who you do it for, and you're just enthusiastic about life. So that's what I'm known for, is encouraging and inspiring people to live their life in the front row.
And you wrote a book along that line called "Why Settle for the Balcony." What was the motivation for writing that book, and what were you trying to get across to people?
Well, it's funny. In 1998, I wrote my first book, "Whose Comfort Zone Are You In? How to Lead the Life You Want and Be Happy Every Day." So my speaking career after I left SkillPath was I was hired for the keynote, "Whose Comfort Zone Are You In?" And it was the theme of being responsible and accountable for where you are in your own life. So if you don't like something, move. If you don't like something, stretch. And your comfort zone is very dangerous because your comfort zone leads to mediocrity. And if you jump out of your comfort zone, make sure you're stretching it, but you're not jumping into someone else's comfort zone, meaning you're not doing things in your life based on what other people tell you what you should do. And I got very popular in speaking on that topic, but then after a while, my clients are like, okay, we want you back. What else you got? What else you got? And so after a while, I thought, okay, I need to write another book. So I thought, well, what am I good at? What am I known for? And I looked around and I realized I was always in the front row. And there was a theme to my life, is that, you know what, that's a great theme, is that life is to be lived in the front row. So I wrote my second book, Why Settle for the Balcony? How to Get a Front Row Seat in Life. And that book is about looking at your life as a venue, and you have three choices. You're either stuck in the balcony, meandering around in general admission, or you're living your life in the front row. And I do a real easy self-assessment to look at all the different chairs of your life, your health chair, your work chair, your friendship chair, your relationship chair, your faith chair, your attitude chair, your humor chair. Where are all of your chairs? And chances are all of your chairs are not in the same column. So pick a chair that is that resonates with you as the one chair that you know you need to work on first, and work on that chair. And I've got suggestions on how you can move these chairs closer to the front row of your life. So then I've been speaking on that for a long time. And then this third book that I wrote literally July 2017 was a year to the date that my dad had died. And I woke up that day, and for some reason I weighed myself, which I've had a weight issue my entire life. And I woke up and I had gained literally 2 pounds. So I was grieving, obviously. And I don't blame my weight gain on my dad's death. It was just like, again, this up and down yo-yo weight loss. And I said out loud, wow, how did I do this again? Why do I keep putting holes in my own bucket list? And that's when I...
And bing!
And bing! And that's when I said, oh my God, that would make a great book title. So I had a conference in Hawaii, so I went with them. And I started a 99 Designs book contest of, okay, I need a good creative book cover for Is There a Hole in Your Bucket List? So I started this book cover design and came up with this incredible book cover, and went out to social media to get votes. So a lot of people were voting and judging and commenting, and they were like, I can't wait to read this book. And I'm like, I can't wait to read it either. Little did they know I hadn't written it yet. So then in San Diego, my girlfriend's got this huge house in Coronado that she lives with her son, and I could have my own wing basically. So I called her up. I said, hey, Val, I need to write a book. Can I use your house as a writing retreat? She said, yeah, of course. So I went to San Diego for a week, sequestered myself for a week, and I wrote the book. So I conceived it in July, I wrote it in August, and then I sold it as a keynote in October, printed it in December to get reviews, and then published it in January. And now we're on a podcast on it in February.
I love that you started with the cover design. Because I do that a lot of times. I'll kind of dink around in Photoshop, and I'll come up with some images that kind of fire up certain synapses, and then I'll save those, and I'll do 3 or 4 different versions. And as I'm writing, I'll refer back to that to kind of get back in touch with that mood, whatever it was that inspired me in that moment. And usually it's pretty horrible, but to me it means something, and I use those visual cues to kind of kick back into that. So I love that you did a similar thing there. So
Greg Godek is a speaker or a huge author and very successful in the publishing world. And he saw the cover, and he's in San Diego. So what he did is he printed the cover, and he wrapped it around a book, and he gave it to me to put next to my computer during my writing retreat. So I literally saw a hardcover copy of a book that had my cover on it as inspiration.
I love that. I love that. So a lot of people that listen to this show are what they would call aspiring writers. I hate that term. Because I think you're either a writer or you're not. Mm-hmm. You either sit down and now whether you're published and all that stuff, that's a whole separate thing. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of people would love to write that book, or maybe they want to write a song, or maybe they want to act, or there's so many artistic endeavors that we really put in a separate category in our lives. This is going to be a bucket list item. This is not something that I'm going to pursue with everything I have, because it's artistic, and we put that. We put that on a different thing. It's not as important or whatever, but we put them on our bucket list, this list of things that we want to do before we die. So that means it's important to us. So, what is the concept of the holes in your bucket list? I know what you said about your personal experience there, but, what are people doing to sabotage the things that they really want to do?
Well, the holes in our bucket list are created. Just picture a visual of a bucket with all of your dreams and aspirations and hopes and goals in the bucket. And the bucket has got these holes in it with water leaking out of it. But those holes down at the bottom of this picture of your bucket are nails. And each of those nails has a label on it. And those nails are labeled with negativity and shame and insecurity and comparison and fear and doubt. And those are the holes created by these that we create because we're the ones that pick up the nail and put the holes in our own buckets. So that this book is about how do we overcome comparison to others. It's like, oh my gosh, a writer as he is, or the negativity, oh, I can't do that, there's no way I could do that, or shame, but look at, I did it again, I failed again, how can I ever succeed when I keep failing? So we have shame and guilt that we allow ourselves to make us believe that we're not good enough to accomplish our dreams and our goals. And our insecurity is like, oh no, what are people going to say or think about me? And if I put myself out there, that's I'm going to be vulnerable, and people may not like me, or they may judge me, and I don't know if I can handle that. And then the doubt. Well, I doubt anybody's going to ever want to read this or ever want to buy this, and so and then the fear, of course, is fear that, well, I'm not a writer, I can't do this. So these are all real, but they're all self, they're we do them to ourselves, which means we can then overcome them ourselves. My favorite story happened actually at the very end. I wrote the book and I sent it out for review. And then I went to a private concert of a Juilliard graduate concert pianist who was doing a tour with somebody else. And she used Vegas. So the people that she knew in Vegas invited her to do a private concert in their home. So my husband and I saw her. Her name's Cherie Rowe, and she performed this amazing concert. And then afterwards, I said, please tell me, how did you get from housewife, mother in Las Vegas to Juilliard graduate living in New York City and now traveling on this concert scene? She said, well, I always wanted to be to go to Juilliard. And you know what? I applied just to get it off my bucket list. I said, what? Excuse me? Can I interview you? And so I interviewed her and then put it in the final version of the book. And what happened was she always, from a young kid, she always wanted to play the piano and go to Juilliard and become a professional pianist. And so she had the posters on her wall and the applications in her drawer. And when she was growing up, her parents were, they supported her being a piano player, but her dad said, but yeah, you can't make a living out of it. So she put the applications away. She took the posters down and she applied for another college full ride scholarship, and then became got married and lived in Las Vegas, and became a piano teacher on the side, and got pregnant and had a baby. And then she went to a course by Mike Rayburn called Creating a Virtuoso Life, and he asked a couple of questions that changed the trajectory of her life. And one of them was, what do you need to forgive yourself for in your life? And the other one was, what in the depths of your heart do you still want to do? And she said she had to forgive herself for never applying to Juilliard, because that was always in her heart, and she never did. And she needed to forgive herself for not applying. And then the other question was, well, what do you really want to do? She said, I really want to apply to Juilliard. So as an adult, married with a baby girl, she applied. And she only applied so she could finally cross it off her bucket list. It had been on there for years, but it wasn't a priority. She was married, but it was always her dream. And much to her surprise, she got in. I mean, it was beyond her wildest dreams. She got in, and she was that good. So her husband supported her by quitting his job and moving to New York City with her and their baby girl. And she went to Juilliard. So I can't remember what your original question was, but but that's what having your bucket, patching up the holes of your bucket list is, overcoming those fears and doubts and insecurities and shame, and feeling those things in your heart.
I love it. When you're translating one of these seminars that you give in person, and you've worked on it and you've honed it, but then you're taking these concepts and translating it to the page in book form.
Mm-hmm.
How is the process different for writing something that you don't get to deliver in person with certain inflections and being able to read the audience? How is the process different for putting it on the page than delivering it?
Well, I write very much like I speak. So when I actually sent it out for review, the most common comments were, wow, it's like I was sitting down and having coffee with my best friend. Or like, wow, it was as if I was just having Marilyn talk to me. So I write like I talk. And then, and so I don't worry about how it's going to come across. I just write from my heart. I get it out on paper. And then I just hire an editor to make it into a format in which it's grammatically readable to the reader. But I don't, like for my audiences, I want to know who is in that particular audience, and then I can gear my message toward them. But the book is different because I did not start with exactly who's going to read this book. I started with, this message is a message of hope and inspiration, so I need to get it out there. I think some marketing people probably would have said, well, you need to narrow it down. Who is it for? And, if I look at my audiences, this is a great book, for example, for direct salespeople, or I speak a lot in the franchise world. It would be great for a franchisee audience where everybody in the audience owns a franchise. So it's anybody that wants to do more with their life. This is a great book for. So I don't worry about getting the message out, and then an editor make correct.
Well, the book is called "Is There a Hole in Your Bucket List? How to Overcome Obstacles That Keep You from Achieving Your Goals." Marilyn, thank you so much for taking time to come on the show today. If people are intrigued by this or intrigued by you, where can they find you online to find out more about what you do and connect with you?
I'm really easy to find. MarilynSherman.com, like Marilyn Monroe, Marilyn. MarilynSherman.com is where you find me, and some free videos there that people can just watch to see my style, because who I am on stage is the same person I am off stage too. So I'm funny, and I get people to think about their life and about living their life in the front row. And also that's a good place you can purchase my book as well.
Excellent. And they can purchase it on your website or on Amazon.
Yep.
And we're going to send everybody to see you. Thank you so much
Perfect.
for taking time to come on the show, Marilyn.
Well, thank you so much. It was really fun talking to you, and good luck with you and everything that you're doing.
Thanks for listening to the Author Stories podcast. For more great author interviews like this one, go to hankgarner.com and dig through the archives. There's something there I know you'll love. Now stay tuned for a special audio clip from Richard Gleaves' The Jason Crane series.
Brian moved in closer, entering the rusty greenhouse through its eastern arch, keeping clear of the subject's line of sight. He pressed through the rose house, nothing but thorns, and into the grapery, nothing but vines. The meditation tones of the wind chimes were like fingers lipping crystal goblets. Two marble children hugged each other, swallowed by the swamp of a neglected fountain. Brian's shadow entered the palm house, the domed space at center, and the rest of him followed. Brian took aim at the figure's back and whistled. "Hands up there!" The figure waggled its shoulders a little, reaching for a weapon, maybe. "Did you hear me? Hands up! Now!" Brian circled the intruder. He took out his penlight and shone it in the man's face. "Shit!" Burlap and buttons. Just one of the stupid scarecrows. He thumbed his comm. "False alarm!" But Abby didn't reply. He'd lost signal. He slung his rifle back and put up his fists. He delivered a slow-motion punch to the scarecrow's head, an old potato sack with black lettering down one cheek. Its red button eyes were sewn on with plastic thread, maybe dental floss. The mouth was a bright red shoestring hot glued to the burlap. One end had shaken loose, so that the mouth drooped like a stroke victim's. Brian delivered a slow karate kick to its body, a business suit stuffed with hay. A stink rose. The guts were rotted. Only this one scarecrow had survived the storm. A couple dozen others had fallen face down in the mud of the palm house, strewn about like martyrs of some great scarecrow war. Motion caught his eye, and he frowned. A second scarecrow had survived the storm. He hadn't noticed it before, but he should have. This one wore a yellow hard hat and carried an axe. The hard hat was caked with mud, as if the scarecrow had been on the ground. Had someone righted it? Brian turned away from it, disturbed, and noticed a third scarecrow leaning against a nearby wall. This one wore a clown costume and mud-soaked rainbow hair. How the hell had he missed that one? He was an idiot. If that had been a person, they might have shot him in the head by now. He backed away from the trio of scarecrows. They reminded him of some Sunday school tableau. He was about to make his exit when a white face flew from the shadows. The hockey mask of Jason Voorhees, the machete-wielding psychopath of the Friday the 13th movies. The mask landed at Brian's feet and stared up at him. It was a dime store plastic thing, trailing a broken length of pink rubber band, with two sad hollows for eyes above an extruded nub of nose. The cheeks were pierced with little holes and bore 3 bloody streaks of war paint. Some poor scarecrow had lost its fright mask. Brian bent and picked it up, turned it in his hand, letting moonlight play across the concave interior face, creating that optical illusion where the gaze follows you. He lifted the mask, thinking of some childhood Halloween. When? Decades ago, when he'd been Jason Voorhees, stalking Sleepy Hollow, his tinfoil machete dripping Heinz 57. When did I get to be so old? People didn't appreciate the classic scares anymore, the old shock cuts and startle tricks. He made little panting horror flick sounds, ch-ch-ch, ah-ah, held the mask to his own face, and looked through its cut-out eyes. "Trick or treat," he whispered. The answer was trick. A dozen scarecrows surrounded him. A dozen more writhed up from the mud. The eyeless corpse of Ferris the gate guard shrugged a hungry pecking crow and pounced.